me was when those guys went to that island, the big tycoons,
Yes, Jekyll
and
Island. Jekyll
yes,
Island.
Jekyll Island. And
Hmm.
what fascinated me again was the name of the island. When they all went to Jekyll Island and they just basically set the rest of us up, and it's now been almost 110 years
Hmm.
for, you know, the lifetime of what's basically indentured servitude to whatever corporation you work for and to the government. And it just amazes me that those people still have family trusts for money that they put in 110 years ago that's
That's
just
right.
still going. And the so when you think about the when somebody says, well, they do this, your book made it really clear that there really is somewhere in the background a they. There really are
Hmm.
real big business tycoons that are the they. So for people that are curious about who is they and how did they get to be the they, um, they should read your book and find out because it was so fascinating. I'm reading along. I'm like, well, now I know. All these years, I've been curious about how this went on and how some of these people ended up with so stinking much money that it was really, really, really cool. But if you want to, tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are. What can we learn from this history that you researched and you wrote about and keep from repeating? What are we going to do to take from where we are now, in your opinion, of course, take from where we are now to get to where we really ought to be, which is, in my opinion, a little bit more self reliant, if not a lot more self reliant.
Well, let's start with the oil trust with John D. Rockefeller and the tobacco trust with Buck Duke, James Duke. And what they did when they broke them up, they started 6 or 8 independent oil companies or cigarette companies. And so they would compete with each other. Now, for example, let's take Walmart. Walmart has a great business, but Walmart's not necessarily a monopoly because you have Kroger's, you have Sam's, which is Walmart, you have a whole host of companies that do that. So they don't control that market. Now, with the oil trust, the tobacco trust, they controlled the entire market. And when they broke them up, that set loose a lot of entrepreneurs and capitalists, and they were wildcatters. They went out there and found oil, and then they processed oil, and they had these refineries that made money. The tobacco companies, the 6 or 8 tobacco companies that went out there, and they were busted up. Then they had entrepreneurship, capitalism going forth, and making a lot of money for a lot of people. Now today, if you break up Google, Facebook, and there's many, many monopolies out there, and let those things thrive and introduce capitalism and entrepreneurship into the monopolies where they can thrive, then you're going to have a big boon in America. And it takes away all that money from certain individuals who control too much.
Well, I'm
Make
not
sense?
sure that they would lose money. I think that's their fear that they would lose money. And of course, they want to maintain the power that comes with all that money as long as possible. But I still think that if they keep their business relevant, they'll continue to make money.
Well,
Um,
what happened with Buck Duke and John D. Rockefeller? They own a percentage of those companies when they sold them off. So
hmm
they made more money selling them off than they ever would have by themselves. Same thing holds true today. If these companies were sold off to entrepreneurs and capitalists and would expand those businesses worldwide, then you have profit for everybody.
Absolutely.
And, and the holders don't have all that control, which is the
Well,
problem.
which is definitely a problem because when you get to the point where your choices are limited because the business tycoons are paying lobbyists that
Hmm.
pay the legislation or influence the legislation, whichever way you want to look at it and however you believe, um, to protect the interest of the business tycoon. The rest of us are pretty much at their mercy. And
Correct.
and people are starting to have a very big growing anger about that. And it's understandable that
Hmm.
people are getting mad about it. Um, I think one of the biggest monopolies that I often, run into issues with in the work that I do with people as their money coach is healthcare. You can't believe how many people that you talk to that are literally in tears because they have so many medical bills they cannot pay. And they will never, no matter how long they make payments on them, get them paid off.
That's right.
And I talked to a man yesterday who was literally in tears. And um, his story was very sad. His wife got sick very instantly and passed away. And the insurance company paid, whatever the medical bills that they're going to pay. And the hospital is suing him, even though he didn't sign financial responsibility when she got there. They're suing him for the remainder of these bills. He's only been a
Hmm.
widow for 3 months, a widower for 3 months. And the hospital's
Hmm.
suing him. And he's just heartbroken. He's like, what am I supposed to do? And I said, did you sign financial responsibility? Did you get a lawyer? I mean, the poor man is just broken.
Yeah,
He's
I'm
like
sure he is.
he's like an egg you dropped on the floor and then the dog licked it up, It's broken, it's
Hmm.
gone, and you know, it's very difficult to work with those kinds of issues that are created by this kind of money and power.
Well,
And
now let's talk about how the hospitals, the medical industry is getting so dominant and so strong. It used to be you go to medical school, become a doctor, you go out and you start your practice, and you were the doctor, and you hire your staff, and you would expand your business and do very, very well. So what the hospital's been doing across the country is they then come along to the doctors and say, listen, your insurance premiums are huge. What we like to do is we'll buy your practice out. We'll pay you a salary. We'll pick up all the insurance bills. You will then be a part of the hospital group. And with that, you come in under our wing. But what happens is their income gets cut in half, and
yep,
they don't make the money they used to make. And then they control the health system. The hospitals then control the entire health system, which is basically a monopoly.
yes, it
And
is.
they're getting
Absolutely.
very, very good about it. Now they'll come back and fight and say, well, there's many, many hospitals or health systems in the country, so we're really not a monopoly. But they really
Really?
are
If you look and
because these
see who owns which one of them, you're finding they're getting pretty close. A lot of them are.
a
Well,
lot of them are. And,
we
and what
we
they've
have
done is,
done so well talking to each other, Tim. We've only got a couple minutes left. So in the couple minutes, I want you to tell our listeners how they can learn more. First, tell them how they can get the book, and then tell them if they want to reach out to you, if you want to hear from listeners, tell them how they can reach out to you.
okay, what you can do is get the book. It's on Amazon, so you can buy it off of Amazon. Our
Okay.
webpage is the tobaccowars.com, and that takes you to our webpage. Then my email address is Jim, just Jim, at Rumford, Rumford, Rumford Group, GROUP.com. And you can even use my telephone number, 937 416 6100. You go ahead and talk to anybody.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Well, everybody, it's a really good book, and you'll be fascinated by um, how this created big government and how it's gone on and how these companies are just building up to this enormity that is almost unimaginable, but certainly controls a lot of our lives in
Hmm.
today's marketplace. And, for some people, they're like, oh, okay, well, what are you going to do? But for some other people, it's going to be such a fascinating read and it'll be a wonderful learning thing. And if you're a teacher, teaching U.S. history or U.S. government, I would think you'd want to read this book and have, some classroom discussion on it because it's really very interesting about how it all went. And anytime
Yeah.
you can find a book that's interesting and makes history good, it deserves a little bit more attention than the ones that are all dry and dull. So I want to
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jim, for being here. Now, in the last couple of seconds, do you have anything else you want to share with folks?
Yes. In the book, at the end of each chapter is all the documentation of how that happened. Then hopefully this book will promote the schools and teaching history again, because we need to teach our kids history.
Yes, because otherwise you'll end up like me. You won't have learned much history and you won't understand when it's starting to repeat itself and what you can do to kind of put the stopgap on that.
Because
Um, yeah,
it's true. Hey,
it
you're a
is.
delight. You're
Thank
a
you.
delight.
It was so much fun to have you on the show. I thank you for joining us. And everyone, all my wonderful listeners, you know what I am going to say before I say it. I'm going to tell you anyway. Don't forget, be grateful and you will attract good things. Until next time, I'm Rhonda Cobb, the Money Coach.